So the lecture series is on randomization in computation. So before I move to the actual topic, let me spend a few minutes. Why randomization? Why it's an important field of study and why one should care for randomization in computer science. So when you started learning computer science, probably all of us learned in the same way. We wanted to solve some problem and we wrote some program to solve that problem. And program is nothing but a set of instructions. You know what it will do after this line, what the program will do after line 10, everything is known. And you write a program and you try to solve a problem. That's all about learning computer science at the beginning. So if you really think of writing a C program or C++ program, there is no randomness usually. We don't write a random program. So where randomness comes into picture? It turns out that there are many problems which are apparently hard to solve if you just want to write a code and your decisions are already made in the code, that what you do with the next step, what you do with the next step. There is no random issues. On the other hand, if you are allowed to toss coins, suppose you are tossing coins and if head comes up, you are doing this, if tail comes up, you are doing that. Suppose you are allowed to do such kind of operation, not only like a static line of codes, on the other hand, you have this extra facility that you toss coins and depending on the coin outcome, either you go to the left or you go to the right. Yeah? So it turns out that if you allowed such kind of power, many computational problem can be solved rather easily, where we are not sure how to solve them without tossing the coins. Yeah? And like one classical example where randomness was useful, the example of primality, that given a number, can you test whether it's a prime number or not? There was a very well known textbook randomized algorithm to solve this problem. Currently there is a algorithm that does not use randomness also, but that's a different story. So there are numerous such examples where you are allowed to toss coins, you can do things in a smarter way. Okay. So that is where randomness enters into picture of algorithm or computer science. Now, as you can see that it's a resource, right? You are tossing coins and it's tossing coins is rather difficult. I mean, generating these random bits when you are tossing coins and seeing whether it's a head or tail and doing something according to that, generating this random bits are costly. So we would like to use them as little as possible, right? Suppose if you can solve some problem just using 10 random coin toss, you would better like to avoid it using 100 random coin toss. You want to use this as less as possible. Ideally, we would like to solve some problem without any randomness. That is best for us. We don't want any extra resource. That is a field of area in computer science that called, people try to eliminate randomness from randomized algorithm. That's called de-randomization. So these two fields go side by side. Using coin toss, people design clever algorithms, and there is another body of research that focus, I am not happy about using randomness because it's costly. I would like to remove randomness from your computation and try to give you deterministic solution. So that field of computer science currently known as de-randomization. and it's a central issue in computer science, or rather a conjecture in computer science, that tells that whatever you can solve using randomness, we can solve it without randomness also with more or less same efficiency, right? This is a conjecture, no one has a proof of it. So what people try these days, you take your favorite randomized algorithm and try to throw out or try to remove random bits from it and design another algorithm that works almost as efficient as the original. So we don't know how to remove randomness from all randomized algorithm that will solve that conjecture. But first let's make the small step, take a favorite randomized algorithm and try to remove random bits from it. Okay, so today's talk I will focus on a very specific problem. I will first show you how to tackle that problem using randomness, and then I will touch the second issue, how to solve that problem even without using randomness or very limited randomness with the more or less same efficiency. This was just, I wanted to give you some kind of historical background, why you will be interested in randomness or de-randomization in computer science at all. Okay. So let's begin the actual problem that we want to discuss. It's a famous problem called max cut. So what is the problem? You have given a graph cut of G is a partition of V in two sets, S and S complement, right? Size of a cut these are all undirected graph. So pictorially, if you have these two sets, S and S bar, there could be few edges where both the vertices lie inside S or S bar. There could be edges like that, and there can be edges like that. Right? The size of the cut is the number of edge that one vertex is in A and other vertex is in S complement. The definition of cut clear? Now the max cut problem asks you the following question. Given a graph G, find the cut that maximize the number of edges, cut edges. If you already know some computer science theory, then this is a very well-known NP-complete problem. What does it mean? That it's very unlikely that we have a very efficient algorithm to solve this problem. In particular, we don't believe that we can design a polynomial time algorithm to solve that problem. It is an NP-complete. I'm not going into details what is an NP-complete problem, or probably you have already heard it in other lectures. Okay. So we cannot solve this problem exactly in polynomial time because it's an NP-complete problem. The next question that comes, that's a very natural question in the theory of NP-completeness. Can you solve it in an approximate way? Okay, I cannot give you a max cut, but can you give me a cut which is as large as you can? Can you provide it? Maybe I won't be able to give you the max cut, but I will give you a sufficiently large cut. Is it possible? So if you don't follow something, please ask. Feel free to ask. So the question is that, can you provide me a cut which is like at least half of the maximal cut possible? Okay. The answer is yes. We can have a very simple randomized algorithm that can solve the problem. So the first goal of the lecture will be to present that randomized algorithm, and then we will touch the second issue. You will see that randomized algorithm will use lot of random bits. We are not happy with so many random bits, and we want to eliminate random bits. So we will touch this issue and show you how using a very few random bits, which actually you can eliminate at the finally, you can solve the problem with a similar efficiency. Okay, so before doing that, let me quickly recap a few things from discrete probability. Probably all of you know. I'm assuming that you are familiar with the term like sample space or random variable. If someone is not familiar, just feel free to ask. Then I will start from at least the word sample space and random variable. Okay, so let's say I'm doing things very informally. No, I want to give you a full rigorous treatment of discrete probability. Let x be a random variable. By expected value of x, I mean x can take several values in the range of x. Let's say a1, a2, am. Finitely many.
So range of x is numbers.
Range of x is numbers, yeah. Yeah. So this quantity just measures with that number and with what probability it comes, multiply that and add. Let's take a simple example. Like let's say you have two dice. So you are throwing two dice, and so they are marked with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you are watching the sum of their faces when you throw them, and let's x denote that sum. So you are interested what is the probability of, let's say, x equal to 4. So what is the possible the sample space is just all 36 order tuple these are the possible things. Very simple stuff I'm doing. So if you want to estimate this, just look at the events that adds up to, that gives 4. So this is like 1 3 3 1 2 2. So this probability is 3 by 36. What is 1? Sorry, yeah, 1, 2. Now by expected value of x, you know what I mean. There are total 11 possible sum, right? 1 plus 1 is 2 and 6 plus 6 is 12. So there are total 11 possibility, and you have to estimate the probability of each possibility and multiply it by that value, and if you compute it, if I remember correctly, it comes like 7. You can check that. Is it clear what I mean by expectation of a random variable? If you should ask question if you don't follow something. This is a very simple fact from basic probability theory. Then when you study expectation, that important concept that comes next is linearity of expectation. Which is probably the principle behind theory of discrete probability. It is very simple. Let's say x1, x2, xn are random variables. Then if you take the expectation of the sum, it just adds linearly. It is sum of the expectation. This is a very basic feature of linearity of expectation. So if you don't know the proof, proving also is very simple, but I don't have time to prove it. So if you don't know the proof, just see any basic probability book. So you are going to use this principle. So this is called linearity of expectation. Okay, so yeah, let me define the independent random variable. I hope all of you know these things. The two random variable x and y are said to be independent if probability that x takes some value a and y takes some value b is just they are basic facts from probability theory. Now let me close this recap by just saying this one simple fact, which I leave it as an exercise. Suppose x is a random variable such that expectation of x is, let's say, mu. Mu is some number. Then verify that following fact, that probability that it just tells you that it cannot be the case that all the possibility lie below mu, then the expectation cannot touch mu, and it cannot be the case that all the possibility are above mu, then the expectation will be more than mu. I just leave it as an exercise for you to verify it formally. Very simple, but this is very useful. Okay, now we are ready to solve the problem. So how do you solve the problem? It's very obvious. Take a vertex V, I'll write it, let me just say, and toss a coin. If you see head, put the vertex in set S. If you see tail, put the vertex in S complement. This is the most obvious strategy that you can think of, and it turns out that it works. It works well. This is your randomized algorithm. As simple as that. There are a couple of issues. So how many coin toss you are using? Let's say V, cardinality of V equal to N. N coin tosses. Okay, now we have to prove that it actually works. Consider an edge UV. Consider an edge UV and keep the picture in mind. So when that edge UB will not be in the cut. Exactly. For both U and V, either head has appeared or tail has appeared. Then they will either go to this side or that side. Then what is the probability that you get head for both U and V? One by? Yes. And same as like tail. So the total probability that edge will not be in the cut is clearly half, 1/4 plus 1/4. So with the probability, that means probability half that edge will be in the cut if you do this random partition. This idea is clear? That's all you have to understand about the algorithm. Now we will write a quick analysis. Now the topic of my title was something to do with independence. Now notice, where is independence here? How did you get that 1/4? Basically you have multiplied half with half, and you have used the fact that these two coin toss are independent. You independently tossed coin for all the vertices, that's why you get half into half, 1/4, and that was important for your argument. Now let's define the following random variable for an edge E. Define the following random variable xc as follows. Xc equal to 1 if E is in the cut, 0 otherwise. Remember that what is random here? Random is that experiment, coin toss, right? This random variable gets 1 and 0 in that experiment. Now define the following random variable. X is just summation over xc, where E runs over the edge set. For every edge you have a random variable xc which can alters between 1 and 0 in your random experiment, and define the new quantity x equal to summation of xc, E runs over edge set. Now clearly the value of x determines the size of the cut, isn't it? Xc gets 1 when it is in the cut, and then you count 1 in the summation. If it is 0, you do not count. Right? Now what is the expected value of x? Expectation when you are doing this random experiment, you are tossing coin, it is expected over that random experiment. This by definition. Now can anyone say what is the expectation of x? Exactly. How do you get that?
Half into mod. Each edge has probability of half being in the cut.
Yeah, so you have to first open up this summation using linearity of expectation. So just write it. And from this simple definition you get the expectation of each of the random variable is just half by that argument. With the half probability it falls in the cut, otherwise it not. As is correctly pointed out, so this is half E. So by doing some very simple thing, we have done something. We have solved this problem at least in a half approximate way. So this is a randomized algorithm. On an expectation, it provides you a cut which is like at least half of the maximum. Right? So far so good. Any question? So randomized algorithm is pretty simple. Do the coin toss for all the vertices and place the vertex into two set, and this analysis guarantees you that expected size of the cut is half of the number of edges. And now remember that fact that I gave as a small exercise. If mu equal to E by 2, there will be some cases where it will actually more than E by 2. So this analysis only tells you that in expected way the cut size is E by 2, and combined with the fact you can convince yourself that there will be situation where it will be actually more than E by 2. Good. So we have some, so on an average this algorithm performs very well. An expected size of the cut is very good. But what is bad in the algorithm? N is your like input size, that's a graph, number of vertices, and you have used too many coin tosses. For each vertex you have tossed a coin, so you have eaten up n coin tosses. And for some reason that will be clear later, ideally we would like to use, if n is your input size, we would like to use like order of log n many random bits. It is not immediately clear now why I need it, but it will be clear later that ideally we would like to use only order of log n many random bits when n is the input size. Now here if you observe these algorithms a little more carefully, the concept of pairwise independence comes. Notice again that algorithm. So in the analysis we have just used the fact that U and V have enjoyed independent coin toss, and you want it for all pairs. Then the next question that comes in the mind, then why you are tossing so many coins where they are completely independent? After all, you only want independent between pairs. Then your analysis goes through, right? Is that intuitive statement make sense? Yeah. So let's see where we have used that coin toss in the analysis. We have used the fact that U and V, for U and V you have independently tossed coin, and you had this half into half argument. But it can so happen that U, V, W, when you look 3, they may not be independent. Those coin tosses may be correlated, but they are only independent when you look at pairwise, because you need only that much to analyze it.
And there we have defined independence only for pair element.
Yeah.
Probably you can just give them a general definition.
Okay.
N random.
Okay, that's a good idea. Just making that idea concrete. So let y1, y2, yn are random variable. We say that yi's are pairwise independent if for all I not equal to j,
And general independence also you
okay.
can just for context.
This is actually all product. This doesn't make sense to write AND here. Notice the difference between these two definitions. So let's say you have bunch of random variable y1 to yn, and they are like totally independent. That means whatever value you give y1 to a1 and blah 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 yn to an, this probability is just product of the individual probability. It's totally independent. Now these random variables are only pairwise independent. That means when you look at a pair like yi and yj, they are like total independent. But that doesn't mean that yi equal to a, yj equal to b, and yk equal to c will be product of all three. I'm not saying that. It's only the independence is only in the pairwise, and here it's a total independent. Now again, if you come back to algorithm, notice that the way we have analyzed the algorithm, we have used total independence. For every vertex, we have tossed a coin which is totally independent of what you do for other vertex. But the funny fact is that when we analyze that algorithm, we have only used that they are independent, pairwise independent. I am only talking about an edge that has two endpoint u and v, and I am using the fact that they are pairwise independent. So the next question is that then why do you unnecessarily use so much randomness? Can you do something smart that will reduce the number of randomness? Is the issue clear? What we want to do next? Let's see what we can do to reduce that number of random bits. Question. The answer is yes. We don't need to use n random bits. We can just play the game with order log n random bits. There is a huge improvement, right? N and log n are like exponential separation. So we can save. Yeah. Now we have to. This is not completely elementary to see, but I will try my best to give you some idea how this can be done. So we will rather solve the general problem how to produce we will solve the general problem how to produce n random variable y1 to yn where they are pairwise independent. We will solve that general problem. Okay, let's see the usually in computer science language this is called construction of pairwise independent spaces. Before that, I just want to introduce some notation. Let's say x and y are two vectors of r bit. You understand what I mean by that? So these are like set of all strings of 0, 1 of length r. So you have 2 power r of them. Let's take two vector x and y in 0, 1 power r. So x and y look like a r bit vector, right? These are the bit position. It may be filled with 0, 1, 1, 0, 1 and so on, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1 and so on. These two vectors. By their dot product, what I mean is that, so it's like an array, one dimensional array, the ith coordinate of x into ith coordinate of y. You multiply them coordinate wise and add and take modulo 2. In some text it is written like inner product, but I am not using the term inner product for some reason. So you just coordinate wise multiply them, add them and take the modulo 2. So if it is, it will return a number, right? If it is even, modulo 2 will return 0, otherwise it will return 1. Just you define this dot product over 0, 1 power r. Is it clear, that definition? Okay. Now let us begin the construction of that space. Sample a vector A maybe I should write it full, uniformly at random. So this construction is really a sort of algorithm. We will first present that algorithm and then we analyze that it's indeed the correct one. So to start with, this is a first step. Sample a point A from 0, 1 power r uniformly at random. So there are 2 power r possibility. Sample one of them at uniformly. Define the following random variable so just remember that this is like all 0 string to all 1 string. There are 2 power r strings, all 0 to all 1. For every string, I will not always write like this big R bit. I will usually write like I, where I will denote some large string. So I am going to define a few 2 power r minus 1 random variables, where the random variables will stand for each of the pattern except the first one. So if you delete the first one, there are 2 power r minus 1 different bit string, and for every bit string I am going to define a random variable. That's why I have written 2 power r minus 1 random variable. You don't take the first one, which is all 0. Let me write and I will then explain the notation. Can anybody explain what I have written there? This is like mod 2. So this I ranges from 1 to 2 power r means I ranges from actually here, this string to this string. I don't take all 0. So I stands for a r bit string.
R bit vector.
r-bit vector, and you just take the dot product. A is also a r-bit vector. Take the jth coordinate of A, take the jth coordinate of I, multiply them, add over all coordinates, and take modulo 2. Just following that definition that I wrote of dot product.
So these random variables take 0 or 1.
These random variables take 0 and 1 because you are doing this modulo 2 finally. Yeah. Is the construction is clear, and the claim is obvious that y1 to y2 power r minus 1 forms a pairwise independent set of random variables. You take any two yi and yj, they are pairwise independent. Let me write that claim.
Also each random variable is uniform.
Yeah, that I will also prove. That's important. I will prove that. This is a claim. Yeah.
Can you just explain
Which one? This one.
J and
This one. So A is a r-bit vector, some 0, 1 bit vector, and as I said, I also stands for r-bit vector, except the first one. I am not taking the first one, all 0 vector. So say I is somewhere here. It stands for this vector, and take these two vector and multiply them coordinate by coordinate. So take the jth coordinate of A, multiply it with the jth coordinate of I, and sum it over all such coordinates, just to array, multiply them and add, and so that returns an integer and takes a modulo 2 operation, so that you get a 0, 1 value out of it. Before we prove the main claim, it is important to prove the following claim, that yi's are uniformly distributed. What do you mean by that? You simply mean that probability of yi takes a value 0 equal to probability of yi takes a value 1 equal to half. This is true for all I. I have to prove this. Proving this pretty simple. You have to use the fact that I have not used all 0 I. Let's take a variable yi, and let, without loss of generality, assume that first bit of yi is 1. It is not all 0, so some bit has to be 1. Let's, without loss of generality, assume that first bit of yi, for bit of I, is non-zero. Let, without loss of generality, assume I of 1 is non-zero. So that means that vector I looks like the following. 1 is sitting here and you don't care for the rest. Rest can be anything. Yeah? Clear? Now I want to prove that probability of yi equal to, let's say, 1 is half. That I want to prove. What is this probability? This probability is equal to probability that summation ai, sorry, aj yij. I am not writing always the modulo 2, it is understood now that I am taking modulo 2 after that. It equal to 1. Sorry, sorry. Yeah. Now use the fact that the first bit of I is 1. So I1 is 1 basically. And let's just split the summation and write it at A1 maybe I should carry always mod 2, otherwise it can look confusing. So what I mean is just mod 2. But if it is clear to you, then you can just ignore that symbol. Alright, so this is the probability you have to estimate. Now can anybody say that why it should be half? Any idea? Remember that choosing A uniformly at random really means that choosing each of the bits of A1 to AR uniformly at random between 0 1. Choosing A uniformly random equivalently meaning choose every AI uniformly at random between 0 and 1. Independently and uniformly at random, yeah. Now can someone use that little piece of information and argue and finish the proof from here, why it should be half? The intuitive fact is that this is called, I think, the principle of deferred decision in probability, something it calls in the book. So it really means that whatever you do here, it does not disturb here. So A1 is like floating and it will finally decide the value. So can someone give an 2-line argument here to finish the proof why it should be half? Probably there are many ways to see it. One maybe formal way you can see is that you take the probability over A2 to AR summation AJ IJ equal to, let's say, B, where and then probability that A1 equal to 1 minus B given this is a conditional probability. So probability over A to 2AR, this quantity can take any value between 0 and 1. I give it B, and then condition on the fact that if finally you have to satisfy 1, that A1 has to take 1 minus B, and you just sum it over all B. There could be easier direct way to see it if you think about it a little bit, but this is one formal way to state it. Now A1 is a uniform bit, so it can take the probability, the value 1 minus B with probability exactly half. So take that half common, and this is a probability distribution, so that will add up to 1, so just half. But yeah, if you stay a little bit with this kind of proof, you no need to prove, I mean it will be obvious to you that why it should be half. Okay, so we have proved that every bit yi is uniform. Now we have to prove that little difficult claim that they are pairwise independent. But the main idea will be more or less same. You have to play the same game to prove that. How much time? 10, 15 minutes? 10 minutes? 10 minutes. So if you are not convinced about the argument, just do it yourself and you will see that. Now why they are pairwise independent? Take I not equal to j, what here? Oh, okay, okay. Okay, let's take I not equal to I prime, and you have to estimate this probability. Probability that, let me just specify one choice, it will be clear that it is true for other one also. You have to prove this. I mean, without loss of generality, I have just taken 1 and 0. You can take any other combination and it will be the same, will work out. Okay, just you have to apply the same idea. Since I and I prime are different, there will be place where I is 1 and I prime is 0. There will be some index, right? And basic idea is that whatever you do to I prime, that particular index will not be determined because it is not there. And that will save you in the analysis. Okay. So, yeah. So how shall I write it? So this probability is just probability that y, okay, so let k be an index such that ik equal to 1 and I prime k equal to 0. Choose and fix such a k. Such a k exists. All the other way. Yeah, it's, yeah. If you don't find, yeah, without loss of generality, assume that. So this probability is simply equal to probability that yi prime equal to 0 into probability that yi condition yi prime equal to 0. From the definition of the basic probability theory. This is half, you know, because these are like uniformly distributed random variable yi prime. This is half. Now why this is half? This is the question. You have to use that fact that k is the index such that ik is 1 and I prime k is 0. Just without loss of generality, assume k to be 1. The first, you have a a1 plus many symbol I should not mix, like a1 and aj ij j more than equal to 2, conditioned on the fact that I prime j aj Now the simple reason is that this event will not set the value of a1. So a1 is like free, and I don't want to repeat all the argument, and if you just use the same argument, it turns out to be half. So that gives you 1/4. Just do it exercise formally, maybe you can prove it more formally. This is the idea. The idea was the same. Good. So we have found a set of random variables. They are pairwise independent. Now finally we want to do something in the algorithm. So coming back to the algorithm. So our goal will be to remove those pure random bits from the algorithm using these correlated random bits. They are only pairwise independent. Can be correlation between 3 of them, 4 of them, 5 of them, like that. They are only pairwise independent. There is no relation. So you have, remember that you have n vertex graph. Choose R such that, so how many random bits you have? 2 power r minus 1, y1 to y2 power r minus 1. Choose your r such that 2 power r minus 1 is n. Just that means r is like roughly like order log n. R is like order log n. And what you do simply is the following. For every bit, for every vertex I, you just replace with the random variable, you plug the value that random variable yi gives. You see what I mean? Earlier for every vertex v, what you have done? You have tossed a coin and assigned 0, 1 depending on the outcome of the coin toss. Now what you do? You do this random experiment and you get some value of yi, which is 0 or 1. Now if the 0 comes, you put I in S. If 1 comes, put I in S complement. Make sense? I am not writing it explicitly. It's pretty simple. What? Because these are also 0, 1 random variable. That means if yi equal to 0, put I in S, else put I in S complement. This is the algorithm, new algorithm. Now I am not using coin toss for every vertex, rather I am only using random values that is coming from this experiment. Now what is random in the experiment now? How do you generate these random variables? What is random? Random is only the choice of A. I delete it. That vector A is only the random part. There is no other random part in it. And these random variables are determined by that vector A, which is random. Okay, so there are two issues. How much randomness we have used? Answer is here. A was a vector in 0, 1 power r. Remember that A was a vector in 0, 1 power r. And to decide, to sample A, what you have sampled is A1 to AR, this coordinates. So you have used r bits of randomness, which is like order of log n. We have saved from n to log n. Right? Earlier it was n, now we bring down to log n, exponential saving. But the next question is that why it works? It can so happen that I do all these things but the algorithm doesn't work. But why it works? Because in the analysis again, if you go back, we have not used anything more than pairwise independent, and these bits are pairwise independent. So that 1/4 argument that you gave, half into half, that's still valid here because of this proof. That's all. Now the last step is that we actually don't need any randomness. That the last 2 minutes I will just take and finish it off. Now this is the reason I wrote this fact here. Now all we have proved is that expectation of the cut size, and this expectation is over the random experiment which is equivalent to choosing A. This is the only random part in your whole analysis. There is nothing else random. So expectation over this random quantity, this cut size is half of E. Now if you see this fact carefully, plug mu equal to this, it tells you that there is a setting for A for which the cut size is at least cardinality of E by 2. Right? This probability is over what? Probability is whatever random in the experiment. Here the random is only the A. So there is a setting for A for which the cut size is more than E by 2. But what is that A? How do you find such an A? A is one of the vector in 0, 1 power r. Just check one after another. How many checking you need? You need only 2 power r checking for A, which is like order n, because r is order log n. So just go through all possible choice of A and compute the cut and take the maximum one. Sorry. Yeah. So just so this is de-randomization. Now I am claiming that I don't need any randomness. What I want, I will not pick A randomly. I will go one by one different choice of A and compute that cut and take the best among them. And I know that the best will satisfy at least cardinality of E by 2. Deterministic algorithm. Cycle through all choice of A and take the best cut. This is called the one example of de-randomization. You could de-randomize algorithm complete. Yeah, I think I'm done with whatever I wanted to talk. So the final remark that I want to make, that this is a very active area of work, that coming of randomized algorithm for the problem and removing randomness to make it deterministic. There's a large body of literature. If any of you are interested, there are plenty of lecture notes, books are available. You can check in Google. There are some courses going on in math science, sometime in CMI, where we focus on such issues. Question, comments? Yeah. Any question you can ask. If you want reference, I think that book maybe I can give as reference. If yeah. Just although my material was not exactly from that book, but I think it's a good book. I think that book probably has an Indian edition now by Michael Mizzenmacher and Eli Uffal. I think that book, yeah, at least in IMSC library I know there is a copy. It may have an Indian edition.